Hello, and welcome to Strange Dominions, where we attempt to unlock the mysteries of the unseen and unheard, unknown and unknowable. I am your host, Octavian Graves. Tonight, I am speaking with Jessi Doyle, who is the host of Hellbent Holler, a YouTube channel where Jessi and her partner Joe investigate cryptids such as Dogman and Bigfoot, as well as other paranormal phenomena. If you have seen something strange or unusual, such as a cryptid, UFO, spirit, or anything in between, please send me an email at strangedominionspodcast@gmail.com and you can be on the show. If you are enjoying Strange Dominions and would like to get extra content as well as support the show, you can become a patron starting at just $4 a month. You can get 2 extra episodes a month as well as merchandise for the higher tiers of support. With all that being said, I bring you my interview with Jessi Doyle of Hellbent Holler. Alright, we are here tonight with Jessi Doyle, paranormal and cryptid researcher, YouTuber, and podcaster. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here.
So I've been seeing your YouTube on Hellbent Holler for a while now. I just finished, I think, part 3 of the Land Between the Lakes video series, and I really, really enjoy it. I think you guys are doing a really good job.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been an ongoing project. We've been putting videos up on YouTube of our expeditions for a little over 2 years now, and it's really just grown a lot over the past couple of years, or over the past couple of months, since we put out this latest Land Between the Lakes series.
That's awesome. So where did this all start for you? Where is your beginnings in all this?
I started getting into paranormal research when I was pretty young. I've always kind of been into the paranormal and ghosts and ritual magic, and growing up kind of a weird gothy kid. That was always kind of something that was part of my life, and it was part of my family and everything. I'm from Western North Carolina, and folk magic is a part of my upbringing. So all of that and spiritualism was always a part of my life. And I met Joe in New Orleans. We both lived in New Orleans, and we met, and he was really into cryptids, and I was really into more the paranormal side of things and ghosts. And we ended up moving to, we were both from the Southern Appalachian area. We ended up moving back to the Southern Appalachian area together, and we kind of melded what we did and created Hellbent Holler. And we wanted to do something that was boots on the ground investigations into paranormal, cryptozoology, high strangeness, and kind of just meld everything together and make it more of an outdoors paranormal venture. And we did this for a while, and then we ended up deciding that we needed to start filming what we were doing. So we really got into that and started getting into the equipment and filming everything, and we've been making videos ever since.
That's really awesome, and the quality is superb. I really like how you guys are doing it. It's very, very cohesive, and it's just a lot of fun to watch as well.
Thank you. I do all the video editing myself. We film everything. Right now on our latest videos, we've been filming everything with GoPros. We have a Ghost Stop Phasm camera that we use for night investigations, as well as a Sony AX53. So we have a lot of different cameras that we use, but when it comes to the post-production, I do all of the editing and graphics and everything, and I do all of that myself. So I'm self-taught in that way. If you watch my earlier videos, it's not that great, but then I get better and better as I go along. So I'm kind of teaching myself how to do it as I go.
I know that struggle because this entire show is done entirely by me. I mean, I have a background in music and like music editing and recording and things like that. So that's definitely helped with this show. But figuring out the actual, because podcasting, it's a little bit different than just music, and there's different techniques that have to go into it. So I've had to really learn how to do that. And you can probably go back to the beginning of this show and hear the difference in the quality from then to now. So I definitely understand that struggle.
Right.
So with the expeditions that you guys have been doing, what are some of the notable ones? What are some of the experiences that you've had that have really stood out in your mind?
So I think the most notable project that we've done recently is the Land Between the Lakes series. We went to the Land Between the Lakes kind of on a lark to begin with because we didn't really put a lot of credence into the whole dogman phenomenon. And it was sort of we both thought it was kind of a creepypasta type thing, and that, you know, we didn't really think that that was a possibility. But then a few things kind of lined up. We had a lot of people sending us reports of dogman activity near us, and people who were very credible. And we went and interviewed a gentleman in north of us, and he took us to where he had his sighting. He was completely credible and just a wonderful guy. And he just went all into this. And somebody he knew was going through dealing with a dog man coming up to her home and slapping the side of her house and terrifying her and her children. So that happened, and that happened right about the time that the alleged LBL survivor came out and did his interview with the Cryptid Studies Institute guys. And so we were like, okay, this is all kind of lining up at once. So we decided what better thing to do than to just go to the LBL and check it out for ourselves, because that's what we do. That's what kind of sets us apart from everyone else, is that we actually go out into the woods and actually do these investigations. So we were like, all right, I'm tired of reading about this online. This is not what we do. What we do is we go out there. So we decided we were going to do Dogman Summer. And this was in the summer of 2021. So we packed up, we went to the LBL for about a week, and we were there and filmed and went all over. And we mostly checked out the northern part where the alleged massacre took place. And while we were there, we got a really, really impressive what appears to be a dog man on our thermal. So that really changed the game for us completely, because at this point we had what appears to be proof of an upright canid, a giant canid. It had giant ears, it had a snout, but we have 2 thermal images that we include in our videos, and they're there for everyone to see and take a look at. But we got those with a Pulsar Axion XQ38 thermal, and it's right there. And so that really changed the game for us. And we're like, okay, I guess Dogman's real because we've seen one now. So we also had paranormal instances on that expedition there. And, but that was in our first LBL series. And then we returned to the LBL in late February of this year. And that has been the latest 3-part series that we put out recently. And that was probably our biggest hit to date, was that 3-part series. We had so many people watch it and give us all kinds of responses and get really engaged in it. And it really, really took off. So that was kind of like our big turning point for Hellbent Holler, was doing this LBL series.
Yeah, and it really shows. I mean, those are some really, really good videos, and I'm surprised that I didn't catch the thermal. You'll have to send me that, because I need to watch that again. For the people who may not know, and it's kind of surprising probably to you and to me about the people who don't know about the LBL massacre, can you go into that a little bit about what happened and when it happened?
Sure. So allegedly in the early 1980s, there was a family in a RV that went to the Land Between the Lakes. And the Land Between the Lakes is a peninsula. It's a national recreation area that is located in both Kentucky and Tennessee. It is bordered by Lake Kentucky and Lake Barkley. So it used to be called the Land Between the Rivers, and in 1966 it was taken over by the TVA. There were a lot of families that lived there, and all the people were kicked off of their land. It was eminent domain. They dynamited the rivers up and built dams and formed the lakes, and then turned it into a national recreation area. Well, in the early 1980s, like I said, a family of 4 went to the national recreation area in an RV. Now, this is the alleged story. They parked their RV. It was getting late, and allegedly a dog man emerged and attacked the family. and it killed everyone in the family. And according to the story, which was recounted by Jan Thompson, who was a clerk at a local gas station nearby, she recounts the story as it was told to her by some police officers who were on the scene. So this is third-hand information, is her story, but her story is the most famous out of all of it, the Jan Thompson story. So everyone in the family was killed. In some versions, the little girl is found in the tree. So it's a really horrific story. It captivates a lot of people. A lot of people get really passionate about it because it really strikes you, you know. So that is the main Dogman story of the Land Between the Lakes. Well, recently an alleged survivor came out. It was a guy who claimed to be about 12 years old, I believe, when the massacre occurred. He's an adult now, and he claims that he hid and then he survived the massacre. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding that online with a lot of people. And that's why we decided, let's just go check it out and go take a look at, you know, all of these things that are part of the lore, that the bunker area, and that's where the massacre took place. There's these large concrete structures that look like, people speculate what they are. They call them the bunkers, but from our research, we've determined that they look very, very similar to rainwater cisterns, but it's called the bunker area because there's all of these like theories that they were built to contain the beast, or that they were built by the government for the kill teams to hide out in. There's a lot of different theories on what these are. They appear to be rainwater cisterns. So we learned that by going on the ground at the Land Between the Lakes and really investigating what was in the area, what other areas that are similar to it look like on the peninsula, and we kind of determined that. But what's weird is, I'm not saying that the story is not true, because we found a lot of stuff that lends to the credibility of something going on to this day. There are a lot of people that are missing from the Land Between the Lakes. There's a lot of people that are found dead, and they're found in very, very horrific manner. They're just gruesomely killed, and lots of missing people, like a lot of missing people. So, and in our latest LBL series, we find a tent that was ripped open. And apparently that's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah, I remember when I saw that, and that was really interesting. And then I guess while you guys were in the cemetery, you saw something moving.
Yeah.
That was interesting too.
Yeah. But it's not just, I mean, it appears that there's stuff going on up until this day, that we're not just investigating murders from 1982, we're investigating murders from 2022, you know, that there is a lot of strange stuff going on. And it's not just Dogman phenomenon. It is everything. It seems like there's just everything there. There's a lot of people who talk about it, the LBL, who either work there or live there. They'll tell you that the bitterness has soaked into the land, that there's a lot of anger where all of their land was taken from them. They ended up digging up graves and moving whole cemeteries to different parts of the peninsula. Just desecration of graves. There's a lot of that going on there that happened when they moved everything around. And it's always been a strange place. And anybody we've talked to or interviewed, they've all said that there's something not right about it. There's a lot of paranormal, ghost-like encounters that people seem to have, in addition to the Dogman encounters, in addition to people claim Sasquatch activity. It's just a whole bunch of layers of just all of the strange history, and then all of these strange encounters that seem to follow.
In your mind, what do you think Dogman is? Is it just a purely flesh and blood animal, or do you think that there's something more incorporeal at work there?
I think that it's both. I think that it's not a flesh and blood animal. I think it's evil for sure. I don't think there's any good in it. I definitely think that if it bleeds, you can kill it. I think that it's not an apparition of sorts. It's not like a demon. I think it is physical, but it's also spiritually evil. You know, I think it might be something that could be something left over, something. It could be older, or it could be something that passes between our realm and another realm. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I just know that there's something just inherently evil about it, something that you can feel when you're in these areas where they're claimed to have been, that there's something real evil there. That is, it's like the area cannot sustain like life for very long. There's just an evil lurking there.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And I've been to areas that are somewhat similar. I also, while I have not had a chance to record any of it for the show, I do go out on my own in areas where I am in Maryland and look for stuff. We actually have a dogman legend in the northern part of the state called the Doyle. And that one is kind of, it's elusive because it had a lot of reports in the 60s and 70s, very similar to the Maryland Goatman, and then the sightings kind of died down. But I definitely think there's a renewed interest in it. I haven't seen any current sightings as of the last like 10 years or so, but I've been investigating that area and I found some pretty interesting things. The thing that I sort of, when I look at these things, I do my best to reserve like human attributes such as like good and evil to humanity. And so when I look at these things, I tend to I tend to make sure that I'm like opening up my perception. And so I wonder if the darkness and the heaviness is sort of these very abstract, strange things coming into our existence, and then our perception labels them as dark or heavy. And I wonder what their objective is, or their objective nature really is. If it is dark, then yeah, that's definitely it. But I always wonder if there's something a little bit more objective going on and not something as subjective.
So our interpretation of it, what we're describing it as is our interpretation of
exactly. It's how our experience colors it.
Well, I mean, a lot of the stories, though,
yeah, definitely, and it's interesting.
There's not a lot of warm and fuzzy dogman stories. So.
Well, it's interesting because the Land Between the Lakes story is somewhat unique. Because a lot of the Dogman stories that I've heard, both on like Dogman Encounters and other podcasts and things that have people who've seen Dogman on, is that they seem to be more concerned about scaring you or threatening you, but they don't seem to make much physical action. Like maybe they'll chase you, but I have heard very little about people actually being physically attacked by them. So that makes the Land Between the Lakes very interesting because of how singular it is.
Yeah. And what we keep finding when we're in the Land Between the Lakes, and we included it in my last video, is we keep finding these just trails of bones everywhere. And I'm not necessarily saying for sure that I'm attributing that to a dog man, but we just keep finding stuff like that. And the environment changes from the time we see it earlier in the day to later on. So it seems like in that particular area that something was aware of us being there and then left that there for us when we came back, because some of that wasn't there when we returned in the evening. So I don't know. Like, again, and you can't ever say that you know what anything is. And there are no experts here. There are no we're blindly feeling around in the dark.
There's definitely people who claim to be experts, but I agree, there are no real experts in this field.
There's people who claim to be the Pope and they live under a bridge, I mean, people can say a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily make it true, especially on the internet. So I don't think that you can I don't think that you can ever say what any of these things are. And I think that we have a 1,000-piece puzzle and we barely have half of a piece of it. I mean, we don't have enough information. We know what we can interpret from what we see, what we experience, but that's about it. And then if you compile witness accounts from credible witnesses, you get a little bit more of the picture, but I don't think we'll ever have the entire picture of what is going on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Because I just don't know. I don't know if all of these things, whether it be Sasquatch or ghosts or Dogman, I don't know if these things are interconnected or if they are independent entities or, if one feeds into the other or is connected to the other. I just don't know. It looks like sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It's just, I think that's what makes this so interesting and exciting, is that there's always so much mystery to it. And when you feel like you've gotten somewhere and you feel like you've crossed some sort of Rubicon and opened a door, it just opens a door to 1,000 other doors. And I think the longer that I do this kind of work, the more questions I end up having.
I think that goes across the board for anybody who gets into this. You really cannot go into this thinking that you're going to conquer it, because it's going to conquer you and your curiosity, and you will be left wondering 1,000 more things than you ever did when you first started.
Yeah.
I know that you said that you have a magical background in ritual magic and folk magic, and I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that and some of the experiences you've had, and if you've attempted to experiment with using magical techniques to investigate cryptids or any other kind of paranormal phenomena.
I try to keep those a little bit separate for now, because I try to go into my cryptid research in a very, very scientific way. We're very tech heavy. We take a lot of equipment. We like to get readings. We like to get baseline readings on everything. We take a lot of data. We get a lot of data. We use Geiger counters. We use EMF. We do radio frequencies. We check everything. And we like to be very data driven. Before we get too spiritual with things, we want to be very data driven. And I try not to marry those two sides too quickly, especially if I'm dealing with something that I think could possibly be evil. Or, malevolent in some way, because that's opening a door to something coming back with me, and being, like the Hitchhiker effect would occur with that. That's something that concerns me. So it's very important to me that before you go into any of these situations, you need to ground yourself and protect yourself. Not try to stir it up spiritually, because you don't seem to have to do that. We've not had to induce anything at this point. We just go out in the woods and things happen without inducing anything via, ritual magic or anything like that. You go out there and it occurs, So as far as that goes, the only kind of things that I do that pertains to any sort of magic or anything is grounding and protection of myself. And I think you need to do that if you're going to do any kind of paranormal investigation, whether it be ghosts or anything like that, or cryptid investigation, because again, we just don't know what we're dealing with when it comes to these entities, and what plane they're on, or where they're coming from, or what they're doing. So, so when it comes to my cryptid research, that's about as far as I get into it with mixing the two. I think that my paranormal background, my ghost background, that has kind of something to do with it, but it's always been just sort of my practice is really a combination of, if you know anything about like Appalachian, like granny witch culture, it's sort of like a lot of superstition and a lot of ritual and anything like that, but it's also mixed with a Christian background. And I spent many, many years in New Orleans, where I knew a lot of voodoo practitioners, and I knew Santeurian. I knew a Santeurian priest. And so I have like a lot of influences in my life from different religions and practices that I take a little bit from everywhere and kind of do my own practice as a result of it.
Yeah, I definitely identify with that, because, my entire life I've always kind of considered myself to be a pagan or a polytheist. But since starting this show, I've gotten really into like traditional grimoire and ceremonial magic, which, as I've said before, is very Christian based. It's very based in the Judeo-Christian system. Yeah. And with that, there are a lot of safeguards that one has to do to even attempt to, evoke any of these spirits or anything like that. So I definitely identify with that as well.
Of course, yeah. And I think a lot of people that come from this region, even though they have a more of a Christian background, they do little rituals that they don't realize they do, so I think that's all part of the culture and kind of where it comes from and what paints it.
I definitely agree. While you've been out, what are some of the most dangerous experiences you've had, or ones that have really kind of frightened you?
I get a little bit frightened every time I go out because Joe and I go into very remote areas, and we go just us. We go out at night. A lot of the places we go to, most of the places we go to, you don't have cell service or anything like that. We hike miles into the woods. We carry everything on our back in backpacks, and we are in very, very remote areas. So it is a dangerous situation to begin with, even without thinking about the possibility of running into a cryptid or anything like that. Just out the gate, it's dangerous. You're in the middle of a forest where you can fall into a ravine, or you can get attacked by a bear. It's, you have your inherent dangers that are already there to start with. And then you throw on top of that you're in an area that is known for cryptids, or that you're dealing with cryptids, and that you have the potential of running into one of these creatures. I think the danger level just shoots up from there. And it becomes a very, very dangerous situation. You have to be prepared to handle whatever occurs, whether it be something that may be considered normal or paranormal. So we both go out armed. We both carry guns. We both carry knives. We are both trained. I've taken many, many survival courses. I'm very good in the woods. Carry a personal locator beacon. That is one of my top rules, is that I always carry a personal locator beacon. It's a Garmin InReach Mini. And if you're familiar with David Paulides and his Missing 411 work, he always suggests there's like cardinal rules to. We use it as kind of like a phrase: "Don't get missing 411." But he always says to always be armed, always have a personal locator beacon, and always stay together. So we try to follow those rules to a T, because we want to make sure that we come back from every expedition we go on.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend anyone who does this kind of work should have that. I remember hearing him talk about that in one of the Missing for One movies, and I thought that was a really good idea, and I was surprised that I had never thought of that. Yeah, so I definitely agree, and I need to get one. I haven't really had a chance to go out into any of the super remote areas. A lot of the, Maryland, we have wilderness, but it's always backed up by civilization. So I've been meaning to go up to places in Pennsylvania and Kentucky to just really just get lost almost, and see what I can find. I know that you said you go out at night. Do you see any kind of difference in activity during the day as opposed to at night, or is it kind of just a mixed bag?
Oh, well, it depends. I mean, I've had some areas where during the day they're perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine and normal. It's a walk through the woods, and then at night it completely shifts. It will turn very quickly into something very isolating and terrifying, and you hear something coming through the woods at you, and you don't know what it is. I've experienced what I would call a bluff charge. That's what it was. And in those instances, yeah, it can change. But then, you go back to our last Land Between the Lakes expedition. We're there in the middle of the day, and I see a black figure it was not human. I saw with my own eyes a black figure with long, thin, just completely unnatural arms that hung down low, and it had just a gait to it, and it was just the most unnatural thing I've ever seen in my life. I saw this in the middle of the day with my own eyes, and then Joe saw it a couple of days later, the exact same thing, dark in the woods in the middle of the day, just shooting through. So I think it depends on where you're at, whether whatever the entity is or the creature is, if it wants to show itself to you during the day. We've never really had a daytime experience like that. Mostly we have experiences at night. Mostly our day expedition is a scouting mission. We go out during the day, we scout around. All right, this looks like a great place for us to check out at night. We'll either stay out, or we'll come hike back out and then go hike back in again at night and do our night investigation. But we've rarely had experiences that intense during the day than the one we had at the Land Between the Lakes.
It's so interesting because a lot of the experiences that I've had that I consider to be way more intense have been during the day than at night. I was actually, I think it's episode 293 or 298 maybe of Strange Familiars. I'm a good friend of Tim Renner, and I've been on the show a couple times. And when I first met him, he and I went to an area that we both call Kazoo's Woods because it's in Maryland. And I had an experience there. I didn't see anything. I was walking up a trail, and I got to a part of the trail where basically the trees go from like oak and old growth to like pine trees, and I got this really weird feeling and something in my head, like it was me talking to myself. It was not mind speak or anything like that, and it was a very clear message. It was, you can either go forward or go back to your car, but if you go forward, you may not be prepared for what you're about to see. At that exact moment, I got what I would call tree knocks, like 2 or 3 tree knocks to my right. Behind me, I got something imitating a whistle. It wasn't on a bird, and I searched for it days trying to find a bird that was similar to this, and it was just like doo-doo, doo-doo in that inflection, and it was very strange, and it sounded like it was coming from all over the place. It started behind me, and then it went to my left, and then a right, and then it kind of started, like, ended in front of me, and then as soon as it ended, a bunch of birds flew out of, I think it was crows, flew out of the trees ahead of me, and I was like, all right, you know what, I think I'm ready to go, and as I was walking back, I got a grunt to my left. And it's a very strange thing because of how small this area is. It's not in wilderness. I mean, there's houses all over the place. And I don't know what it was. I didn't see anything. But that was in the middle of the day. That was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When I went up with Tim to show him this, I was explaining that on the way to where I was going, I kept getting like little knocks, like barely knocks. Like it just sounded like taps, basically. And I showed him on some sticks just while we were walking up what it sounded like. And then when we got to the area that I had my experience, we started getting those taps all over the place. And they followed us around the place. I mean, we went up on multiple trails, on multiple different parts of the woods, and we just kept getting followed by these taps. And eventually Tim started doing some taps on a tree with his stick, and it started mimicking what he was doing. Again, from like 11 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we were getting these taps. He eventually saw something. He tried to get it on picture. There was some really weird synchronicities with owls. At one point, we were walking, and we both heard the owl, and then not even a few seconds later, my girlfriend sends me a picture. We have a cat who for some reason looks very much like an owl, and she had made a collage of my cat next to a bunch of these owls to show the similarities. And then as soon as I told him this, I showed him the picture, and he was looking at something off in the distance. He looked at the picture for less than a second, and he looked up to find this thing, and it was gone again.
Well, your problem here is that you went out with Timothy Renner, and
I know.
If you expect to go anywhere with him, you're going to expect a lot of synchronicities to occur, especially with owls and the like. I'm surprised you guys didn't find a skull in the middle of the trail.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, I have a Tim Renner tattoo.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, a Wendigo tattoo. It's a Timothy Renner original there, but yeah, it's I think that's your first problem is you've got that Timothy Renner, the weird magnet there with you.
Absolutely. So when you guys have been out, what are some of the, like, have you gone out thinking that you were just looking for, an animal, let's say just Bigfoot, for example, because I know that, a lot of people still feel that this is a flesh and blood creature we're dealing with. So have you gone out just thinking that you were dealing with an undiscovered animal and then gotten these really weird, paranormal experiences along with it?
That was a lot of what we first started doing, was doing primarily Bigfoot, just straight up Bigfoot type research. I had a couple of theories about it, nothing I was real married to, but it went out with that intention. Okay, but you have to separate yourself and not think that every sound is a Bigfoot around every tree. So you just kind of go out without intention, just go out and do the work, because there's more often than not, nothing happens. That's why a lot of people are like, they want a video from me every week. And I'm like, I can't give you a video every week because it would be boring as hell to watch like every week.
I'm honestly surprised that you have as much video as you do, because I am very much of the same opinion that Tim is, that this stuff does not like to be filmed. We can record it audio, but for some reason it does not like video.
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to film it. Like the audio, it seems like it's okay with the audio for some reason, but like, no, you can't take a picture, you can't film anything. I mean, for what I've got, I'm surprised we have what we have. It seems like, and Joe says this all the time, that Joe's gone out without me before, and he's like, nothing happens. Like, by myself, nothing happens. He thinks that I'm kind of a magnet for a lot of this stuff too, that it's kind of that I draw it in a way. And I don't know, maybe I am, maybe it's because I'm on kind of a weird plane mentally, you know. But you know, we go out and nothing happens sometimes. We don't go out, you know, if you go out with like, all right, I'm going to find a Bigfoot today, then you might have that bias of every little thing is a Bigfoot, every little twig snap is a Bigfoot, everything I hear is a Bigfoot. But you just go out and start experiencing it. And what was happening is we would go out, and more often than not, it was starting to escalate. Like things would escalate as we were out there. The longer we were out there, that it would not just be strange noises, you know, whether it be like knocks or vocalizations or anything like that. It would start to be stranger things. We would start to see the lights, you know, we'd start to see the orbs in the woods, the lights in the woods. The lights would start to respond when you would yell or you would flash your flashlight at them. They would respond, something like that. And then we would go with the intention of doing primarily Bigfoot type research. We would take the equipment that is necessary for that. Again, we carry everything on our backs, so we have to kind of be selective sometimes about what equipment we're going to hike in. If we're going to hike 5 or 6 miles, and you know, mountainous terrain, you have to be kind of selective about what you can carry with you, because you have to carry your water and everything else too, in addition to your research equipment. So we would have the intention, okay, every time we come to this spot, come to this area, we've had a lot of Bigfoot type activity, let's take this equipment with us, so we'll go for that. Then we get out there, and then all of a sudden we're having all kinds of what would be considered ghost type activity. You would have and I think Timothy Renner uses the term wildergeist, and it would just be ghost activity. And so now we're getting to a point. I'm getting to a point where I think that there's some sort of trickster element to the whole thing as well. That it knows what your intentions are, and it's just gonna flip it on you. So it's all a part about the whole. Whatever this is, again, I don't know if anything is just a flesh and blood animal. I don't believe in the whole Bigfoot is just a dumb monkey running through the woods. If it was a dumb monkey running through the woods, we would have gotten one by now. Yeah, it's the people who do any kind of Bigfoot research and who claim it is just an undiscovered ape. Again, this is not a tiny little you know, primate. This is a giant. This is something that is 8 or 9 feet tall.
I mean, even 10 to 12 feet tall in some stories. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is not just an undiscovered primate. You are smoking crack if you think this is just an undiscovered primate. There is something supernatural. Like, there is something supernatural to this. There has to be. Because at this point we would have gotten somewhere. And obviously there's something going on. You cannot have this many people who have had this many experiences, firsthand experiences. Even if you account for people who are just making stuff up, you still have that huge percentage that is truthful. These are sincere people, and they have had these experiences, and you wouldn't have this if it wasn't real and if it wasn't out there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that, you know, I wonder, if the broader mindset of people who go out looking for Bigfoot or into Bigfoot, if the mindset is changing to accept some of the weirder stuff, because we've been dealing with so long researchers basically weird washing these stories, and when the second they hear an account that is a little bit too far out from the big monkey in the woods story, they cut it out. And so I really hope that we're getting to a point where we're really accepting these broader stories and showing the full scope of the phenomena.
I think a lot of people are. I think that that's definitely becoming more accepted. I know that Ron Moorhead's latest book, The Quantum Bigfoot, really goes into, and people call it the woo. And some people have attempted to make careers out of making fun of this concept or debunking this concept and attacking this concept. But I think it's just absolutely ridiculous to deny what's in front of you, deny the evidence that has been presented to you just because you think that you have some mission from God to debunk everything. People have seen orbs. People have had UFO encounters and then saw a Bigfoot. This is documented over and over and over again. You can only ignore it for so long. And I know the BFRO, they used to, when they would take accounts, if somebody mentioned an orb or anything like that, they just wouldn't mention it in the account. They would either not take the account and just toss it, or they would just omit those details that didn't fit the big monkey in the woods narrative, like you said. And I think that thank goodness, because of the widespread, because information is so easily accessible and widespread now, people can have their stories get out. There's no gatekeepers when it comes to these stories getting out and people talking about what they've experienced and people listening to them and taking them very seriously.
Yeah, I always found that very disingenuous when the BFRO, as big of a research organization as they are, cutting these aspects out of the stories. It just it really hurts them, I think, in the long run. It shows that they're willing to, edit the information, and that's just, you can't do that when you're trying to be objective about this stuff.
Yeah, data is data, and you can't omit data just because you don't like it.
And it's going to come out one way or another. I mean, that person who gave that really weird account, then they see how much got cut out from the BFRO report. They're going to go to someone else, and that someone else is going to bring the full report, and it's going to come out. It's just not going to be you who's talking about it. And, that's why it's important to me to really accept as much of what someone's telling me as possible, because there's a truth in everything. Even the craziest theory, there's a kernel of truth in all of it.
Well, I mean, they could tell their story, to somebody else, or they could completely shut down. And then you have witnesses who are afraid to come forward because, you'll have people who are taking their accounts and they laugh at them when they mention that they saw an orb or something that doesn't fit a certain narrative. The people taking their reports laugh at them about this. And then, are any more witnesses going to come forward? Are we going to get those stories anymore? I don't think so. So I think it's really good that you have so many people who are willing to actually listen now and really open their minds to the possibilities that there's a lot more going on than the relic hominid thing, that this is just an undiscovered ape, because there's obviously something else going on.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. What's your take on things like UFOs and even the more obscure cryptids? Like, in Maryland and West Virginia, we have the Snallygaster, and in Jersey, they have the Jersey Devil, and obviously you have the Goatman. So have you encountered any of these kind of really, really out there cryptids, or what's your opinion on those?
No, I haven't really gone into any of those. I think a lot of there's a sector of people who it's kind of turns into Pokemon in a way, where you got to collect them all and they're kind of little characters. And I have had no experiences with any other type of cryptids. I'm like I said, up until a year and a half ago, Dogman was funny to me. I was like, I don't think there's a Dogman. And now I'm like, oh my God, there's a Dogman. I'm starting to believe more in Dogman than anything else at this point. And that's very odd for me to say, but it's true. But I've never had any experiences with any other entities personally or gone on any sort of expeditions where I've sought them. If people have experienced these, I'm willing to listen to them and listen to their accounts. But I don't think sightings of these things are as common or as widespread as things like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, ghosts, that kind of thing. But I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. I think that I like that every little region has their own kind of weird thing that seems to pop up and come into the zeitgeist.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm very into these kind of really weird cryptids just because there is, as them being flesh and blood just does not compute for me when it gets to these weird things. But then when you start looking at both folklore and magic stuff like grimoires, you start to see these kind of weird hybrid figures like chimeras and these entities with dog heads and snake tails and things like that. And then you start hearing people talk about Snallygaster and Jersey Devil, and it makes you wonder, how prevalent are these things? I mean, are they really just coming up out of nowhere, just on their own volition, or are people doing something that's causing these things to appear? I think that there's a much broader intersection of the esoteric and the paranormal that I'm very keen to explore.
Yeah. But you think about, there's been Fae lore since the beginning of time at this point, you've had fairies and everything like that. I mean, how would that not be in the same realm of that? So you have stories of Fae. So how is that not similar to what people are also experiencing? Or it could be, again, like I said before, a trickster element that is presenting in some other way that, again, we just don't know. We don't know if it's this cryptid or that cryptid and it's just singular things, or is it all the same? Is it all part of some elemental that is presenting itself to people in some way, in some shape or form, and perhaps different shapes and different forms?
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm very keen on kind of experimenting with is, one of the great quotes that I've heard is that magic, when you do magic, it's basically speaking to these entities in a language they understand. And when I started to get into this and I started reading these old grimoires and all these things, I started to see these wolf entities that had abilities and were very similar to how people are describing Dogman. And in ceremonial magic, incense is very, very prevalent in using incense as a way of attracting these things. And obviously, linen robes and things like that. And so one of the things that I'm very interested in exploring is going out into the woods and instead of wearing camo and having cameras and things like that, just setting out a bunch of incense burners with frankincense and myrrh and a white robe and see what kind of attention you get, what kind of activity you might stir up that way, and see if it changes the attitude or the atmosphere of the encounter, or if it doesn't make a difference. I think there's a lot of experimentation that can be done with this field.
Oh, absolutely. So you wanna go into the woods and turn on some sort of spiritual beacon and bring them in, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm all down for it. That's I love that. I love anybody who wants to do any kind of experimentation, because there's so much of there. Number one, there's not a lot of people that go in the woods and do this. There's a lot of people that are on Facebook groups or they listen to podcasts, and that's exclusively what they do, and that's where they get all of their information. I think the best thing for anybody to do is to go in the woods, even if it's just a little bit. You don't even have to go hiking, 10 miles or whatever like we do. Just go in a little bit. Be with nature. Feel nature and be a part of nature and experience nature, because you are looking for something that is a part of an environment, and that environment is not your office table. It's not your desk. That environment is the woods. It is the trees. It is the soil. It is the moss. It is the water. It is everything. In order to experience these creatures and possibly get closer to these creatures and possibly understand them, you need to at least dip your toe into the environment in which they live. And I think that's a good idea. I love the idea of doing experiments. We did experiments. We started doing more experiments when we go out. We did that scent experiment where Sasquatch pheromone chip, and we had wolf lore, and we got that wolf lore made. There was a family of trappers, like they're generation trapper, and we ordered it online, and it's wolf lore. It's like basically just wolf piss, you know. So but it came in a glass bottle that had electrical tape all around it in a Walmart Ziploc bag, and that's how we got it in the mail, and it smells god awful. But we got that, and we got those Sasquatch pheromone chips, which are a combination primate and pheromones. So we got those, and we were doing that scent experiment to try to draw something in, because it's a shock to the senses of whatever is there, that it's to mate with, something that is challenging it, so it's something to mate with, fight with, or something that'll just at least pique its curiosity. So I think that if you do something, you can do physical experiments like that would appeal to its natural senses and its instincts like that.
Did you get any results from that experiment?
We didn't get anything on our trail cams, but I mean, you never get anything on the trail cams. That's the thing. It's like we set up trail cams with this. One of the was disturbed. We had a third site that we don't know, because we have an ongoing thing with that we might talk about later down the road. But we had 3 sites set up. One was just the wolf lore, and then one was wolf lore and Sasquatch, and then the third site we did something else with. But we didn't get anything definitive with it. The sites were disturbed, but we didn't get anything really definitive with those 2. And then all of our trail cam videos and photos were just completely inconclusive. It was just like small little things that you can't even tell what the heck they are. So we were just like, all right, well, it was worth a shot, but we're going to try that experiment again. But I think it's a great idea and I'm actually probably going to do this, is maybe try some spiritual experiments and go from there.
Now you're talking my language.
If anybody else is going to do that, make sure that you look into how to ground yourself and protect yourself spiritually, because the hitchhiker effect is very, very, very real. We've experienced it, and it was kind of a problem for a little while. When we got back from the LBL, we had shadow figures in the house. We still to this day have some problems with orange lights outside of the windows, shadow figures, sounds. We'll have things that just fly off the wall sometimes, and we've done several cleansings on the house. It's actually gotten a little better since, we did a few cleansings on the house, but we definitely had something kind of hitchhike with us back from the LBL, and I don't know what it is, but we just started having that happen. So it's very important that you remain diligent about protecting yourself and your personal space from anything that may attach itself to you.
That's so interesting, and let me tell you why. I have not heard you talk about that specifically. And one of the things that if you talk to any grimoire magician, they will tell you, even after a very successful operation where the spirit has been bound, you have done all of the safety things, you have your layman, you have your phylactery, you have your pentacle of Solomon, which is supposed to keep you completely safe from these things, and you have your circle. Even when you've done all that, there are these things that will follow you home and hang out at your house for, a week to 2 weeks, and they're not like trying to harm you. And my sometimes co-host Luke, who's also a ceremonial magician, he describes it as kind of like a moth effect. Like when you're doing these rituals, you're a big light, and these other spiritual creatures, even if they're not demonic, even if they're not attached to the spirit that you're trying to evoke, they see that light and they are really attracted to it. And so that really makes me interested about the Land Between the Lakes and the possible spiritual attributes that there may be regarding this whole phenomena.
Oh, there's for sure spiritual attributes. There is for sure. We're not dealing with something just physical here. I don't think we ever were dealing with something that's just physical here. I think that a whole other plane has always been there, and that it seems like with the escalation of everything around us, that things in the paranormal and cryptid and spiritual world, it seems like they're escalating as well. Everything is accelerating, that the veil is thinning in a way. And I think with chaos happening all around us, I think that that's accelerating it as well. And I think that we're starting to have where our two realities are starting to come together in a way. I think that's why we have so many more accounts coming out, and things seem to be getting more intense. So, yeah, I think protecting yourself spiritually is absolutely necessary when you're doing this kind of work. And there's a lot of resources on how to do that. I know that one great place that's a really easy, like wonderful place to start is Michelle Ballinger's book, The Ghost Hunter's Survival Guide. She discusses grounding and protection, and it's actually a very good resource to start from.
Are you familiar with Jason Miller?
No.
Okay, so he has a book about, I think it's protection and reversal magic, and I've seen that cited. I don't own that one. He has another book called Consorting with Spirits that just came out this year. Fantastic book, and it's interesting. I really want every ghost hunter, Bigfoot researcher, dogman researcher to read this book, because there is a part where he talks about when he moved to New Jersey, and he successfully evoked the Jersey Devil, and it's a really fascinating passage in the book, and it really shows how multidimensional this whole phenomena is. But absolutely, grounding and protection is very important. Even if you think you're just going looking for undiscovered animals, you should still do that. I know that you consecrated, what was it, your knives or your guns?
I did my guns, knives, and tomahawks.
That's very forward thinking, trust me.
Yeah. So we have handmade tomahawks that we carry in the woods. We usually carry our handmade knives that we have, and then we both carry Glock 10mm pistols. So I don't know if I'm the only paranormal cryptid researcher who has done that, but I did a ritual over all of our weapons, because in the event that something happens, I've got it ready. Also, when we go out, we carry holy water. A part of our weapons kit is, tomahawks, guns, knives, holy water. We have black salt that we carry. We have Lord's water, and we carry all of that stuff, because you don't know what you're dealing with, and every layer of protection you can have, I think, is absolutely necessary.
And I'm sure that your knives are sharpened steel or iron, correct?
Oh yeah.
All right, yeah.
I have a knife that a friend of mine made for me, and it's got silver wire. It's got an antler horn, an antler handle, and the handle has silver wire wrapped around it, and then there was a ritual done in the full moon, and it was consecrated with blood. So that's my werewolf knife.
It sounds like you're ready to step into a circle and evoke a dogman. That's what it sounds like.
I'm ready to do something.
I know we're coming down to the wire here, but I'm really curious about, I think I heard you talk about one of the expeditions you did where during your camp out, when you were in the tent, a bunch of weird stuff happened. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Which one are you talking about?
I think it was like you there was a handprint. Like a blood.
Oh yes, yeah. So my video hexes and handprints. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that was a weird one. So we were doing this expedition, and we were in North Georgia, and that area is one that it's been an ongoing place we've been investigating. So that's a whole kettle of fish, that area is, because there's a lot of real bad stuff that's happened in those woods. It's a huge wilderness. And we were up there, and we were finding some strange footprints and all of that. We found a whistle that looks like it was bitten in half, that somebody had it in their mouth and then bit it in half, which was kind of disturbing. I kept that whistle. I put it in a plastic bag and kept it. But we built a fire. We set the tents up and everything. We were going to camp out, and we built a fire. We were sitting around it, and this is early on in our work, and this actually sparked us to change our methodology a little bit, because we were like, all right, let's get something to eat. Turned off the cameras, and we turned everything off, and we were just like gonna eat, and then we were gonna go out into the woods and like go just hike for a few hours in the darkness. Well, we turn everything off and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden in the woods, it was not far from us. It almost sounded like a siren. It went off, and we're deep in the wilderness, and it wasn't a siren. It started off sounding like a siren, and then it turned into a mournful wail, and it was insanely long-winded, and it was one of the most terrifying sounds I've ever heard in my life. And it was full of sorrow, and the only way I can describe it is like a banshee. I don't know. Like, and of course we had nothing on. We panicked and get the camera on, but it was the Oz effect where you're just, what? You're just in shock. You're listening to this and you're in shock. And get the camera on and you see my reaction. I was like, what the was that? And it was, so after that occurred, we now have a hard, fast rule. ABF, always be filming, because it was the day that we turned that off that insane wail, and it was so close to us. It was the most just horrific sound I've ever heard in my life. So that happened. Well, after that happened, we go into the woods and we're, going around and we're, going through the woods, and we come back up to our camp after Joe sees like a orange light that kind of gets big and then blinks out, and it's up near our camp. It wasn't the fire, because the fire was off to the right and he saw this off to the left. So we get back up there and we're going around. We go behind our tents, and there is a spot behind our tent where there's mud and there's sticks laid in a pattern, and then there's a handprint in the center of it. So it very ritualistic. We're looking at something very ritualistic here. Something was done here. The sticks were laid in some hex pattern, and the handprint, the fingers were insanely long. Like it was not natural the way these fingers looked, and it was a handprint in the mud directly behind our tents. We did not sleep there. We were like, no. So we're like, there's no way we're going to be able to sleep here. We are not going to do this. It's just not going to happen. We ended up packing up, and we're like, we're getting out of here. We'll come back, but we're not prepared for this. This was early on in what we were doing. And so we pack it up, and we're just like, nope. We throw everything in the car. We don't even pack it up. We're just like, nope, we're done. So we get it into the car, and we're trying to get off the mountain. We get a few miles down the mountain, and it's probably like an hour and a half just to get down the mountain to another dirt road where you can drive another 2 hours to get to the closest town. And so we go, and there's a tree that is across the road where we're the only way we have out, and there's a tree in the road. So Joe gets it out of the way, and we'd just been through there a few hours later, and there was no tree there. So we get around that. We keep going down the mountain. There's another tree in the road, and it just scared the crap out of us. We're like, nope. So after that, chainsaws, we got the tree out of the way, and then we just got out of there. But we started carrying a chainsaw with us because we're like, I don't care. Whatever this is that wants to keep us here is never going to be able to keep us here if we want to get out. So that added more equipment, and we learned a lot from that expedition. But it was absolutely terrifying. It was a handprint in the mud, and I got like footage of it and everything. And it's just a symbol made out of sticks and then the handprint in the mud. So we don't know what's out there. We don't know if there's a woods witch out there, or something, but it's a very, very remote area. It takes hours to get to, and it's very, very remote. So it was.
When we get off, you have to send me the location, because I'm very, very interested in checking that place out myself.
There's a lot of weird stuff with it too. That there was a hippie gathering that they used to have there, and it was like a neo hippie gathering. And the last one that they had, there were several murders and rapes, and like a lot of bad stuff went down. It was like drug fueled insanity, and it resulted in a lot of really, really bad stuff going on. So they're not allowed to do their gathering anymore there. In addition to that, a serial killer hid out in those woods for a while, and they finally tracked him down. Since then, another murderer has hid out in the woods, and they found him out there. Also, are you familiar with wilderness therapy camps?
Yes.
So there's a wilderness therapy camp that operates there, and they basically torture children. Wilderness therapy camps are bad news. That's a whole other kettle of fish, though. Like I said, but we've seen them out there in the middle of winter, and these kids have no shoes, and they're sleeping under tarps. And so you have like a lot of teens that are out there that are being punished, and that they're and like anytime you have like poltergeist activity, a lot of times it's a teen going through puberty, and that's kind of an effect of that. But I think something like that, and like teens kind of going through that time in their life, and there's a lot of energy there, it'll draw in something. I've had witnesses tell me that they've walked up on a ritual taking place in those woods where they had people robed, and then a girl in the middle of the circle, and then they saw them doing a ritual. They had robes and masks and everything. We found women's jewelry, broken jewelry, just hanging in bushes and trees out there. We found a lot of weird stuff. Small children, like small bare footprints in the middle of the winter in the mud, like human small child-sized footprints out there. So it's a really weird set of woods. And there's hardly anybody out there. And it's actually like one of the darkest places on like the dark sky map. So it's like a really, really wild place, and it's big, and that nobody's ever out there. So yeah, that's a weird spot.
That sounds like a hyper window area, if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. And we do a lot of our videos are there. Like we see lights. I get lights on my videos in the woods there. Big, like just, there was a video where we were camping up there, and we see the lights at our camp up on the hill, and we're like, oh my God, there's a light. And then Joe and I run up the hill, and there's nothing there, and there's nobody there, but there were just huge lights up at our camp moving around. And there's nowhere they could have gone. There's only one trail up. The other side's a cliff. So it's not like somebody's up there with a flashlight. So, yeah, that's just, it's a wicked place. It's a wicked place.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I would love to check that out. There's so many areas that you guys go to that I would love to come with you guys and try out some experiments. Well, Jessi, thank you so much for coming on. Why don't you tell everyone where people can find you and where people can watch all your stuff?
Of course. So you can find my videos on YouTube. Just search Hellbent Holler. You can always go to hellbentholler.com and follow my links there. And you can always check me out on Instagram at HellbentJessi. I update there pretty regularly. But if you want to check out any of my videos, just Hellbent Holler on YouTube. And we just started a podcast. It's going to be kind of a companion podcast to the YouTube channel. Our videos are mostly our adventures and our expeditions out in the woods, but the podcast is going to be a companion to that, as well as us discussing different concepts and different paranormal ideas and connections. We're really excited about that. That's called Dark Dive, and that's going to be available on all of your podcast aggregators. We have one episode out right now, and it's kind of a debriefing on our Land Between the Lakes expeditions. So we've launched that last week. So we're really excited about that. So we're just trying to, put out as much cool stuff as possible and kind of bring back the cool of the paranormal. We want everything to be really interesting and dangerous, raw, real, and dangerous when it comes to the paranormal, because that's what it is. And I think it's high time that we put a little cool into it and have a lot of fun with it and really show the scary side of it, because these are not Pokemon. These are not like, what's your favorite cryptid? These are dangerous and this is scary stuff. But I wouldn't change anything for the world. So.
Well, I'm going to put all those links in the description below so everyone can be able to find it. Jessi, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and I hope to have you on again very, very soon. Thank you so much, and you have a great night.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
That was my interview with Jessi Doyle of Hellbent Holler. I really enjoyed having her on and hope you will all go check out her YouTube channel in the description below. That's all for tonight, folks, and as always, I will see you again in the strange dominions.